Lael woke up from a weird dream. He dreamt he was flying around that island, and then he decided to fall in the sea to swim with the fishes. He rubbed his eyes before completely opening them.
Nah!
He screamed as he saw Nale really close to him, observing him. Lael recoiled, letting some distance between them. Nale made an upset face and wrote something on his notebook before Lael decided to speak.
I was just gonna wake you up. There's no need to be that scared. I won't kill you, I swear.
There's this thing called personal space, and I really value it.
Nale's bored expression to Lael's response made him smile even more as he left, as he waved a let's go. Aiken stood up and stretched his arms as he walked outside. Edath was rubbing her hands with a malevolent face, looking mesmerized towards the meat that was in the middle of them. Simon was by her side, telling her to wait for Lael before beginning to eat. Nale was already beside Edath, smiling at them. Lael ended up smiling along with him.
I haven't known them for that long, but I can empathize with them already.
He bit his lip, dropping the smile.
Even though I know they are planning to kill many people in order to get what they want accomplished.
As he joined them, they began to eat the meat.
Did your wish to change this island start with your parents, or was it influenced by someone else?
Lael asked, out of curiosity. Edath looked at him sideways with her mouth full.
It started with my great-grandparents. They were strongly against the way people live here and decided to form a clan with other men that shared the same values. Many dropped out and got killed in the process. Others died in rebellion. My grandparents belonged to what remained from the group that fomented it. They actually increased their numbers and managed to make up about 25% of the island population. When they died, leadership passed to my father. He was not exactly fond of this form of rebellion. He found my mother, who was for sale at the time, and bought her. It's not like he loved her. He had other ideas in his mind. He wanted to make her his slave. She was 15 at the time, and she was nothing but a killing machine. She had to train and learn everything about killing techniques. In the end, those techniques weren't to kill the rest of Jaifir people, but to kill potential victims that will be part of this rebellion, part of our clan. But, of course, he couldn't do that before getting her pregnant. My father decided there should be as many kids as possible so it could continue his work.
That's where you come in.
Lael guessed. He was trying not to sound too shocked, although her story sounded crazy. She nodded and looked away.
Yeah, that's when my older brother was born, when my mother was around 17, I guess. He was the only child for 6 years, and then I was born. I'm going to stick to years for you to understand better, but it's not like I know the exact birthdays or ages. My father had bigger hopes for my brother than for me, since I'm female and he's male. It would be better if I was a guy, so he treated me like one. As you can imagine, as a child I only wanted to please my parents. My mother didn't really care about us, but she would spend time teaching us how to deceive and manipulate others. My father was the one who would punish us or praise us. Nonetheless, he just saw us as this tool for his own personal aim.
Lael wondered what those punishments would consist of, but he couldn't ask about it, as he saw it was a complicated matter for Edath. Nale gently placed a hand on her head, like saying, "I'm here." She smiled at him before continuing.
My mother had another girl, my little sister, which I personally liked, when I was 5. I couldn't stand my brother, but she was really pure. Even my mother seemed to be more caring with her. To be honest, I thought it was because my mother finally had the maturity to raise a child, but I wasn't really sure of that. My father wasn't particularly fond of her personality, of course. He would see a pureness as a weakness, and so she should be thought out to be strong. My mother will usually excuse her actions, which will make my father beat her instead of my sister. My brother, as you can imagine, was really jealous of her because my mother protected her. So, he tried to behave like her. Of course, considering my father's hope for him, that wasn't acceptable.
Edath raised her fist and smacked it on her hand, suggesting he was strongly beaten.
When I was around 8, I was already a pretty good liar, and I could deceive easily anyone and get what I want. I mean, that's what my father wanted. And until that age, I had already managed to kill 20 people. The first 5 victims were with the help of my father, since I was still young, and he wanted us to start early. But the remaining 15, it was only me.
She also tried to kill me, but I was smarter.
Simon made a half smile. Edath smirked.
I met Simon and Nale meanwhile. I was supposed to take Simon down, but he could see through my lies and acts. He knew I'd kill him, so he ended up giving me a lecture instead.
She rolled her eyes.
Why were you going to kill him?
My father was the most feared man in the island back then. He'd shadow Edath's father, which made them enemies. Edath's father thought that the best way to provoke my father was to kill me.
He looked at Edath.
Your father was dumb, because killing me would actually make my father happier.
Anyway, move the spotlight back to me, because I'm the one who's telling the story. Everything seemed to be perfect, if it wasn't for the fact that after a couple of weeks, after I was around 9 I guess, when I got home, I saw my lovely brother killing my sister.
Lael opened his mouth, but before mumbling an "I'm sorry," she continued.
It was clear. She was laying on the floor with blood coming out of her neck, which was open. My brother was next to her, looking at her with a calm expression. He was still wiping blood from his hands and face when he saw me. Then he got really surprised. He wasn't expecting me to catch him doing that. He grabbed me so I couldn't run. I realized that he killed my sister only for fun, and I was going to be his next experience. Well, I think he was jealous too, to be honest. But he wasn't that naive. My brother knew that we was going to get killed if he killed both of us. So, he stabbed the knife into his own thigh, and before I understood what he was doing, he spread some of his blood on me. I was still unsure what was happening when he rolled on the floor, screaming in pain and screamed out loud. My father, who happened to be returning home, rushed inside the house and saw that mess. He got confused at first and then angry. My brother had blamed me all for that. My father was out of his mind and punched me, saying I couldn't do something like that. I tried to protect myself and telling him what really happened, but of course he wouldn't listen. He got on top of me and kept punching me until suddenly he stopped because something hit him in the head. Or so I thought. He started to cough blood with an agonizing expression and fell to the side. So yeah, my brother had buried the knife that he stabbed into my sister in my father's neck. He died not long after.
She continued to eat.
I couldn't move due to shock. I'd killed many people already, but I don't think I even understood the idea of losing people that were close to us. Even if they were a shitty family, they were the people I was used to, who gave me food and spent time with me, even if that time wasn't the best. I didn't know any better. My brother was fascinated, looking at my father's corpse when my mother arrived. She couldn't care less about my father or me or a crazy son, but she couldn't forgive my sister's murder. Of course, she'd end up believing my brother, saying that was just like my father. So because of that, she decided to leave with the only man that had any shred of any reason, my brother. She glanced at me with a cold and disgusting expression, grabbed my brother, and then disappeared the same day. I never saw them again.
Lael was speechless. He didn't know what he should say, and he blamed himself for trying to find out more and making Edath speak about that. She didn't look too bothered, although he noticed she was frustrated, because she was a woman driven by a revenge that she couldn't have. She looked at Lael and smiled, a smile he never saw before. It didn't seem to be a sarcastic one this time, but an honest one.
Don't look at me like that. After all, if that didn't happen, I will have this aim to end all of this no rules nonsense and get these 2 and other fellow mates to help me. Nor you.
She winked. Lael bit his lip and smiled softly too, finishing eating.
Wow, what's that, Edath? Making a move on Lael?
Simon had a surprised expression, and he tousled her braided hair. She rolled her eyes and laughed, which made Lael laugh quietly as well. Lael understood that Simon was trying to break up the tension.
Fuck you! Just because of that, you're the one who's gonna stay up and take the first watch night. Ha ha!
I thought it was going to be Nale.
Simon rebutted, pointing his chin to a tired Nale who seemed to be ignoring them. He looked at Simon with a get-lost expression and shook his head, pointing to himself and then opening his right hand in front of his face, closing the hand in a teardrop while making a descending movement. Simon shook his head.
You're always sleeping when we need to work. You can't just say you're going to sleep.
Nale laughed, although no sound came out, and shrugged.
Well, I decided to change it, so have fun. We're going to sleep.
Edath stood up, still mocking Simon. Nale also stood up and walked towards the house with Edath. Lael imitated them, leaving a complaining Simon behind. Lael lay down onto the same mattress he had taken a nap and folded his arms behind his head. Edath and Nale were sleeping in a similar mattress next to the door, which was still far from where Lael was sleeping. They justified that they should sleep in different parts of the house because that way if someone killed Simon and got inside, they couldn't kill them all in a row. Lael didn't challenge that logic, although it was pretty arguable as they were sleeping next to each other after all. He closed his eyes. His body was so tired that he ended up falling asleep quickly.